I remember when I were a lad, phones had one camera if you were lucky. Nowadays, they've got bloody hundreds of them. I mean, how many pictures are they trying to take? Seriously, why do modern phones have so many cameras on them, and what the hell do they all do? Well, that is what we're going to be covering in this video, and who knows, afterwards you might want to take this newfound knowledge and learn a bit more about improving your phone photography. If that's the case, then Skillshare, who are sponsoring this video, could be the ideal solution for you. They have a vast array of classes on phone photography alone, as well as thousands more on a whole host of other topics that you can use to not only improve your artistic skills, but also other aspects that you might need to turn these skills into a thriving business. There are classes to suit all skill sets, from beginner right up to more advanced levels, and I personally love how the classes are split into bite-sized chapters that I can come back to as and when I have free time, making it so much easier to fit into my busy schedule. And with all of this being available via their phone app as well, I can even continue watching the classes when I'm on the go. Now, if this sounds like the platform for you to enhance your skill set further, don't just take my word for it. After you've finished here, why not go and check them out for yourself? There is a link in the video description down below, and if you're one of the first 1,000 people to use that link, you'll bag yourself a 1-month free trial. Now, the simple reason for why there are so many cameras on phones these days is actually rooted in the limitations of a phone camera. Phone cameras are tiny in reality. The entire module unit for each camera is barely the size of the end of your finger. The sensors within them are even smaller, and when you consider how thin smartphones are and the sheer amount of hardware that's being crammed in there, like the screen, the circuit board behind it, and then the camera on top of that, you realise there isn't actually much depth left for the camera, which then limits the lenses. And the lenses aren't top-notch optical glass like you'd find on larger cameras. I mean, for example, you can buy the entire 3-camera replacement assembly for an iPhone 12 for less than £100. This creates a situation whereby small sensors, fairly low-grade glass, and limited space causes a lot of limitations in terms of image quality, ability to blur backgrounds, and the focal ranges, since a zoom lens needs more depth for the glass to move around. Now, in the early years of cameras on phones, this wasn't a problem for most people. You'd have a selfie camera on the front and a single main camera on the back. But gradually demand began to grow for better quality images and people wanting to be able to shoot wider shots or capture subjects further away, or people wanting to get more professional portrait looks without a focused background. The normal solutions would be to use a larger sensor and larger, faster lenses, neither of which are possible on a phone without making the thing absolutely huge. This is when phone manufacturers began using multiple cameras to get around the problem. Firstly, in terms of focal ranges, as we've just covered, for a single lens to be able to cover a range of focal lengths, such as wide angle through to telephoto, then it must be able to zoom. That requires more depth for the glass to be able to move. However, lenses can be made smaller for any given focal length if it's fixed, because it's designed for that specific focal length rather than having to cater for all the other focal lengths with it. So phones can sometimes be fitted with, say, a camera that has a shorter focal length lens than your main camera in order to see a wider field of view, or perhaps one with a longer focal length lens for a more telephoto view. The phone just then switches between whichever camera as required. So for example, you'd start with the widest angle of view, which is done using your wide angle lens. Then as you start to zoom in, you're just digitally cropping the view from the wide angle sensor until you reach the crossover point where your main camera's field of view comes in, at which point the phone switches to using that sensor and starts cropping that. So some of the cameras might be for different focal lengths. Another could be for focusing closer to subjects, which are known as macro lenses. Much like changing the focal length of a lens, the optics have to move around when focusing as well. So to make a lens be able to focus on subjects both very, very close as well as very, very far requires more space for the optics to shift. So instead, some phones are fitted with a dedicated macro lens, which means it doesn't need to worry about focusing further away. it will instead be designed solely for focusing at closer ranges and is probably incapable of focusing far away. It'll just leave that job to your main camera instead. So far, the cameras have all been for seeing different views. But some are in fact carrying the same focal length, but are more about creating different looks. Some phones carry what are known as monochrome cameras, which only see things in black and white. Well, hang on, Dave, this isn't the 1800s. Why do I want a camera that can only see in black and white? If I want a black and white photo, I could just remove the saturation from a colour photo. Well, slow your roll for a second. There are actually advantages to using a monochrome sensor versus a full colour. A full colour sensor requires an RGB filter array which separates out the red, green and blue colours for each pixel so that it's able to see a full range of colours. It does, however, mean that some of the incoming light is lost through this filtering. On the other hand, a monochrome sensor doesn't require such a filter array, so it's not able to distinguish what colours it's seeing, but it is able to capture more light. What many phones with monochrome sensors will do is utilize the monochrome alongside the regular sensor. So they have the same focal lengths, meaning they will see exactly the same view apart from the fact that one's in color and one's not. They will both then take a shot at the same time and the phone will combine the images together. This can result in better details being captured thanks to the extra light from the monochrome sensor. Plus, it will average out the information between the two sensors, so noise should be less apparent. Finally, we have the problem of phones struggling to create blurry backgrounds. Creating a blurred background naturally is a limitation of physics. It needs a very wide iris opening of the lens, one physically far bigger than a phone would realistically allow. Now, a quick solution to this is software artificially adding blur in. However, this hits a snag very quickly, as the phone only sees a flat 2D image. It has no idea what's far away and what's meant to be close by, so it has to try and work it out as best as it can. And this is where you often see random ears or bits of hair being blurred, because the software just makes mistakes. The hardware solution to help with this is our final camera that we'll look at, the depth sensor. Now, you never truly see the view from the depth sensor. It's only there to help the phone work things out. Now, we're able to perceive depth thanks to the fact that we have two eyes that are slightly spaced apart. This creates two slightly different perspectives that our brain merges together, and it gives us a sense of relevant distances. A depth sensor works on the same basis. By it sitting slightly to the side of the main sensor on your camera, it gives a slightly different perspective. Your phone is then able to compare these two views and try and create a 3D depth map of your scene, so it can work out what's supposed to be in focus and what's meant to be in the background, so should be blurred. So there you have it. The reason that phones have so many cameras is because phones can't be fitted with one camera that will do everything. So instead, they spread it out over several. Hopefully that's helped clear things up for you. As always, if you have any questions or queries, please feel free to leave them in the comments down below. While you're down there, if you found this video helpful and you haven't already done so, then please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons, and hopefully, we'll see you in the next video.